The planet is heating up.
The oceans are becoming filled with plastic.
Change starts now. Change starts now.
We're on a countdown
To zero waste. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This is the Zero Waste Countdown Podcast. Here's your host, Laura Nash.
What is this compulsion we have to consume? And can we break it and not live any worse off at all?
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Zero Waste Countdown podcast and radio show. This episode features Ross Beaty. He's a geologist and entrepreneur in the international minerals field. He currently chairs Pan American Silver Corporation and Equinox Gold Corporation and has found and divested many other resource companies. He is also an environmental philanthropist, primarily through the Sitka Foundation. He chairs the BC Parks Foundation, serves on the advisory board of the Nature Trust of BC. He's the director of the Pacific Salmon Foundation and Panthera, and is patron of the Beaty Biodiversity Center at the University of British Columbia. Mr. Beaty was appointed to the Order of Canada in 2017 and the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame in 2018. I was able to catch up with him for a phone conversation when he was at home in beautiful British Columbia on a rainy day back in December, and I'm proud to present to you my conversation with Ross Beaty. Hi, Ross.
Hi.
Hi, it's Laura Nash calling. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Are you in British Columbia?
I'm in Vancouver, yep. I just
Nice.
got in last night. Well, I was in New York till last night, and it's been raining pretty much solid. I think we get 48 millimeters today.
Wow.
And it's supposed to rain for the next week. Typical Vancouver weather.
You know what? I miss it so much because I was out there for 13 years, so I feel like it's my home. I went to UVic, and then I was in the Navy for a little bit as well. So
Oh, yeah. Nice.
So I'm quite familiar.
Well, the good thing about this rain is it's cold rain, so it means it's dumping snow in the mountains. It snowed 50 centimeters in the last 12 hours up in Whistler.
Oh, my gosh.
So it's really, really, really come down hard.
Do you ski, too?
I do. Yeah, I do.
Nice. That's actually one thing I wanted to ask you, what kind of activities you do to get outside, because I know that you must love being outside so much.
Yeah, I love being outside, and I ski. I do all kinds of things. I ski, I cross-country ski, I canoe, kayak, hike. I just love being outside, so I'm outside all the time.
That's awesome. So that's probably what led you to the Sitka Foundation.
Well, not really. The Sitka Foundation was an outcome of my love of the outdoors. So, I'm a Vancouver boy. I was born and brought up here, and I don't know why, but I've always loved the outdoors. I've just loved, when I was a kid, I was a hiker. I got my first rock collection when I was young. I mean, I just loved the outdoors. And that persisted through high school, persisted in university. So I wanted a job that would work outdoors. Mm-hmm. I would work outdoors in. And I gravitated towards geology because I figured it was a great way to make a living, and I would be able to climb mountains and get paid and fly around in helicopters and camp and do all that stuff and actually get paid for it. So it was a natural thing for me, and I did that, and then I realized I was a decent salesman, so I was able to sell kind of ideas to develop mineral exploration projects here and there, and then I got into the public company game, and I could sell stock, actually, and stories around that, and dreams, and some of the dreams worked out, and most of them didn't. But ultimately, over a long career, I've been a real, entrepreneur in the mineral resource development business, and it's been pretty successful. So I've made a fair bit of money, and but I have a very low spending lifestyle, and my wife even more so. She's an anti-consumer, and so we
Nice.
We don't really spend very much. It's been kind of fun making it. So I figured, well, let me give back to that which I love most, and that is environmental projects. And so I set up a foundation 10 years ago called the Sitka Foundation here in Vancouver, and I've pumped a fair bit of money into that. And from the Sitka Foundation, we are able to support, I think right now we're supporting 75 or 80 different Canadian environmental groups, ranging from, the Museum of Nature in Ottawa to Queen's University to UBC to Pacific Salmon Foundation, David Suzuki Foundation, Pembina, and dozens and literally dozens and dozens and dozens of other ones. Land conservation, environmental education, scientific research into environmental projects, public policy stuff, for example, trying to support climate change regulations, CO2 mitigation, carbon tax, that kind of stuff. It's all over the map, but it's all focused on environmental protection, biodiversity preservation, really in Canada mainly, but the truth is we've got lots of projects down in Latin America as well. So it's kind of global, but it's mostly focused on BC, secondarily Canada, thirdly the world.
That's awesome.
It's very satisfying to me, and so that, one of the many, many projects that we support through the Sitka Foundation was the Canadian Museum of Nature in Ottawa. But even that really was the second or third big Canadian public donation we gave, or public investment we gave. I always prefer to call these things investments because I want a return, and I want a return meaning a better environment or better protection of the environment from those. The first one we did was at UBC in developing something called the Biodiversity Research Center, and affiliated with that was a museum, which is now called the Beaty Biodiversity Museum, and that was such a home run for me. It was so successful. I'm so pleased with it that we just, we were able to do it again at Queen's, again at the Museum of Nature, and quite frankly, I'd love to do it again and again before I croak. This is all good stuff. It's public outreach. It demonstrates the beauty of nature. It also supports research into current problems affecting nature, and that thing at the Canadian Museum of Nature was just a perfect thing for us, and we were very, very happy to be able to do that.
That's amazing. Yeah, I've heard such wonderful things about this. And then the one at Queen's University, so that's close to us in Kingston, Ontario. That's the Beaty Water Research Center at Queen's, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so is that like freshwater Great Lakes, or is that more ocean-centered?
Yeah, it's a bit of both, actually. It's
cool.
Definitely freshwater, and it's not just Great Lakes. It's also groundwater in Ontario, and better ways to monitor it and make sure it's clean. It's outrageous that Canada has more freshwater per capita than anywhere in the world, and yet we still have towns and villages that don't have clean drinking water, that have boil water advisories. It's just absolutely ridiculous. So, it's supporting that kind of thing, and quite frankly, for us, we don't have anything to do with what they do at Queen's. Queen's runs that as they see fit, but we were just really happy to support creation of the Water Research Center so that they could up their game a little bit and just do things better and bigger and more effective than they were before. And that was something they wanted to do, and we were very happy to support them.
So in the zero waste world, we're very much against sending things to landfill if we can avoid it. And that is actually a big problem for groundwater, and something that we're concerned about in our area, because when you put things in landfill, eventually those landfills are going to leak, and the leachate's going to get in there, and we have to monitor these things. So I would like to hear a little bit about your venture into geothermal. Now, am I correct to say that you were in gold and then you went into renewables and then now you're into silver? Is that right?
Not quite, but you're not far away. I've had, in my career, I've started 15 or 16 companies. It's been kind of silly in that way, but about, I'm going to say 2008, I had just sold a couple of copper exploration companies, and I retired kind of from my silver mining company called Panthera. In terms of active service, I'm still on the board, but I haven't really been that active in terms of management. So I was not really ready to retire, and I wanted to do something green and clean and, try to use my entrepreneurial experience in the clean energy world. And I focused on geothermal power because I thought, well, and this is this is a classic case of ignorance is bliss. If you don't know a lot, you can be a great promoter. So I thought to myself, well, if you drill into the ground, you get really hot rocks, and if there's fluid there, you can pump up that hot fluid and to the surface and drive a steam turbine, make electricity, and pump it back in the ground, and it goes forever. So I ran around the world. I started a company called Magma Energy, ran around the world looking for geothermal power sites where we can make electricity from hot water, and there's a few. And after a couple of years, I bought a big business in Iceland, another one in Nevada, export all over the world, literally. And I just found it was a really tough business, and you couldn't scale it up into a global business. So I didn't want to stop the clean energy thing. I'm still totally dedicated to trying to get us off of carbon-based electricity systems like coal and gas and oil. So I moved from just pure geothermal to building a company that also had wind and solar and hydropower. and that became Altera Power. And then just this year in February, I merged Altera with another Montreal-based company called Intergex. And now actually the company's a pretty big company. Intergex is a really great, Canadian story. It's got all of the assets that we had with Altera, plus a whole bunch of its own. And it's producing something like 3,000 megawatts now, which is a lot of power. And that includes wind, hydro, solar, and geothermal in Iceland, France, the United States, Chile, and all across Canada.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's a great company, but I'm no longer involved in the management of that company. It's all managed out of a really outstanding team in Montreal. But I'm on the board. I think I'm the second largest shareholder because I didn't sell any of my shares in Altera. I just joined the two companies together and kept a big share position. So I'm really happy about that. And yet, because for me it was an exit from a management role, I've started another little company in the gold business again, and so I'm sort of working on that right now as my main thing. And yet, I'm really not running it. It's run by another management team. I'm chairing it, but I'm not really doing anything actively. So I'm doing all this sort of business meddling right now, and I'm doing a ton of philanthropy. I'm on the boards of 4 nonprofits. I just came back last night from from New York, where I was on the board of a wildcat conservation NGO called Panthera, global fabulous group. I'm on that board. I'm on the board of the Pacific Salmon Foundation. I'm the chairman of the board of a new thing in BC called the BC Parks Foundation, which is meant to support these fabulous parks we have in BC, make sure they're still loved by the people, and that it doesn't matter what government we have, there's still strong funding that goes to support our park system. And so anyway, I'm quite, I'm running around a lot. I'm a fairly hyperactive soul, so, but I'm trying to really focus on environmental philanthropy as my number one thing, really from here on.
That's amazing. What is Panthera? So are they operating in South America or in Africa?
Panthera is a global wildcat conservation organization. It's the world's best. They have 200 staff members, offices in or field areas in Africa, in Asia, in Canada, the U.S., all over South America. They're trying to protect the world's big cats. The lions, tigers, jaguars, all the many smaller cats, bobcats, lynx, all those sort of things. From, in some cases, hunting pressure, poaching pressure, habitat change pressure, all these things that are basically serving to reduce these wild populations. And it's not so much that wildcats themselves are worth protecting. Of course they are. They're iconic top predators. Mm-hmm. But if they're healthy, they require very healthy landscapes to live in. So that if we can get the cats to be healthy, the whole landscape gets healthier. And so it's a really good way of doing landscape conservation, which is actually the most important thing of all.
Mm-hmm. We saw that with wolves too in Yellowstone when they reintroduced them.
Yeah, exactly the same with wolves.
Yeah.
And yeah, exactly the same. Cougars. You take a place like I live on an island near Vancouver called Bowen Island. Well, there's no predators, there's no wolves, and there's no cougars. Because of that, the deer are just running riot. I mean, deer breed like weeds. And the deer now are completely changing the ecology of the island because they're browsing all the small saplings and small trees and plants, and they're making the interior of the island like a moonscape. So it's unhealthy to have these types of ecosystems that are out of whack, that don't have the full range of predators and prey populations that are, of course, a more natural ecosystem.
Absolutely. They probably have ticks too. Do they have ticks on the island, I wonder? Because they do here, and it's a big growing problem in Ontario with climate change, is that the ticks have moved up into our area. So
ticks are around.
Yeah. When you live on Bowen Island, so I remember sailing around there many times, and it's beautiful. It's so beautiful there.
Yep.
There's a lot of dolphins. Do you see a lot of dolphins from your house?
Well, often people get quite pessimistic with environmental degradation in the world. I mean, it's easy to be pessimistic. There's all kinds of places that are just being absolutely hammered by this heavy human footprint.
Yeah.
But there's other places that are actually give me some grounds for optimism. And the sound, the water around Bowen Island is called Howe Sound. Mm-hmm. And you know what? I've lived there all my life. It's actually getting better now. We see more feeder fish, bait balls like herring and northern anchovy and so on. They're out in the bays. We see them a lot. And with those healthier feeder fish populations, there's more salmon than we've seen in 20 years. With the salmon come the dolphins and the killer whales and the humpbacks and the sea lions and the seals. And so the marine ecosystem in Howe Sound today is as healthy as I've seen it for over 30 years. And I'm really happy to see that. I'm really encouraged. And it's due to a whole bunch of things. Less logging. There was a big mine that was polluting acid water and heavy metals into the sound. It shut down, and its water's been cleaned up with a water treatment plant.
You can go and tour that mine, I think, right?
Yeah, that was it shut down back in 1974, but its pollution kept going into the sound. Well, that's all been cleaned up now. One of the pulp mills shut down. Another pulp mill reduced its contamination of the environment with dioxins. So it's just a healthier sound, and there's more. There's just more ecology that's healthy there, and that's allowing it to kind of come back. And with that, you have more ecotourism. You have a lot of whale watching that goes on. You have a lot more people that come there from all over the world because it's just beautiful and it's on the doorstep of Vancouver. So there's an economic benefit to having a sound ecosystem. And a lot of people forget that. They say, oh, we missed that mine, or we missed that pulp mill. And we need those jobs. We need that that strong primary industry. But actually, there's other types of industries, and there's other ways of creating a strong economy while at the same time being clean. And that's where I really hope and pray that our country can go in the years to come.
Right. I think that's the difficult part. And I feel like our country is a little bit erupting right now, trying to sort this out. Like, how do we do everything right and keep jobs? And it's interesting to watch politics right now. But yeah, it's nice to see that Howe Sound is coming back like that. I can't remember the name of that mine, though, that's near...
It was called the Britannia Mine.
Britannia Mine, yes. If you're ever on the way up to Whistler, if you're listening, you can you can stop in there, and it's fascinating that they stop the pollution. And I believe that water has to be treated for the rest of, like, forever or something.
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much forever.
It's leaking. So did you have that issue too? So you go into places and you have this mine, and then you have to kind of like clean it up afterwards?
Well, of course, that mine started 100 years ago. That mine started at the turn of the century. And, environmental protection that didn't exist. So every year it just gets stronger and better. And today's mining industry is nothing like it was 100 years ago, in a lot of ways. Some good and some bad. I mean, there's much stronger environmental protection. However, the scale tends to be bigger in a lot of big open pit mines. The scale is quite big, and they're very destructive. So, but at the end of the day, I mean, a mine is a depleting resource. A mine always ends. It always, once the resource is gone, it shuts down. And today, mines can be reclaimed really well. I mean, we just closed a silver mine in Mexico about 3 years ago, and you'd hardly know what was there today. There's a pit, a small pit, but the waste area and the tailings have been revegetated. They're now cornfields, and they're providing a good living for the local people. And you would hardly even know the mine was there. So it's just modern reclamation versus old reclamation.
Mm-hmm. And so Canada's mining regulations, I'm sure, would be much stricter, right?
Not really. You'd be surprised. It depends on the company. So most of the companies of the world only do things one way. It doesn't matter if they're in Africa or Canada. They only do things one way. And that's, they're all pretty well run. They're run by people who have pretty good social consciousness. There's an awful lot of value today in a company that has good corporate social responsibility, or environmental and social governance, you could say. And because that's so important, pretty much every company that is certainly a Canadian company would follow the same procedures anywhere as they would in Canada.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did that with the Navy too. So if we went somewhere that had bad dumping regulations, we would still follow our Canadian regulations no matter where we were.
And it's just as it should be. I mean, this is just good business. If you look after your environment, if you look after your workers, if you look after the communities around which you work, that are around the places you work in, it's going to make operations more smooth. You're going to have fewer fines, fewer problems, less disruption. It's just good for business. It's a smart way to operate.
Mm-hmm. And you were saying in one of the videos I watched, if people want us to stop producing all of this stuff and mining and whatever, that we have to stop the demand. because this is a huge one for us. Like, why are we creating such a demand for oil and gas for things like plastic and things that we don't really need?
I know. I mean, it's very hard to be brief on this because it's a subject of which I talk a lot about, I write about, and it's really, a lot of our society right now, a lot of our direction of our economy is wrong-headed. It's all about a growth obsession. Well, what does a growth obsession mean? It means more destruction of nature. It's just that simple. More people consuming more junk, and an economy that has to get bigger every single year. Well, if you work that to its sort of logical conclusion, in a finite world, in a finite anything, you cannot ever have exponential growth because ultimately you run out of resources and the whole system collapses. So we're seeing that in many places, in places like Madagascar, and Haiti, and Pakistan, and many parts of sub-Saharan Africa. They simply have grown and India actually, where there's just too many people, and they've run out of resource base. They've run out of good soil, good air, clean water, and often other kinds of resources. So it's a completely unsustainable form of existence for the world. So, how can we stop it? Well, there's two big overriding problems. One is there's too many people. So luckily, that kind of problem is sort of resolving itself. Women are having fewer kids. On a global basis, there's more than 100 countries now that have negative fertility, which means ultimately their populations will decline. Mm-hmm. There's still some problem areas, but basically the world is leveling out in population, and ultimately I'd like to think it's actually going to decline. So that is a very good thing. All of that's good. The other big problem is we're just consuming too much junk. And this is putting enormous pressure on the environment. Mm-hmm. You see that reflected in how we produce electricity, the carbon emissions that come from that, from all manner of pollution, not just carbon. I mean, nitrogen and pollution in water, destruction of many ocean ecosystems from fertilizer. So it's just, I mean, I could go on for a long time. Yeah. So how do you stop it? And often people criticize companies. They criticize mining companies. They criticize logging companies or oil and gas companies. But actually, those people should look at themselves in the mirror and say, how am I contributing to the consumption of all these resources? Well, it's my lifestyle. Do I really need one car or any car? Do I really need 2 cars or 3 cars in a family? Do I really need to have this computer, this electronic junk that is consuming so many resources? I mean, everybody's iPhone, there's about 30 different minerals that have to be mined to make that iPhone, to make the electronics in there. There's silver, well, I'm not going to go through all the list. Anybody can Google that. But all this stuff requires resources. The best way to reduce our ecological footprint is to consume less. And so I couldn't support what you're trying to do with more conviction, because it's the absolute right thing to do. Consume less, waste less, use things better, get into the recycling economy more. That's how we can make a more sustainable world for our kids and for their kids and their kids. It's the only way to go. Mm-hmm.
I wish I could give you a hug right now. It's just like so. Well, it's so beautiful.
It's so true. And actually, I'm not. Listen, I'm only a man. I'm quite guilty of buying stuff occasionally, and I try to ride around on a bicycle all the time. I mean, I try to have a low impact footprint, but I'm not perfect for sure. And that's the way it goes. But my wife actually is a far more noble soul in that department, because she basically is an anti-consumer. She doesn't buy stuff she doesn't need. She wears clothes until they basically fall apart. She actually makes a lot of her own clothes. She doesn't, we'll go a week and we'll have a tiny little garbage bag. We recycle pretty much everything we use. We are lucky enough to have a beautiful big garden, so we grow all of our own food. And I mean, we're economic terrorists because we are anti-consumers. We don't support our economy in that sense. And that's okay. That's what we all have to do, because actually our economy is founded upon utterly unsustainable principles. We have to change, and the best way to change is every single person taking direct action.
I worry about those people losing their jobs, though. So I always try and bring on businesses that are trying to do something like, instead of toothpaste tubes, they're making like little toothpaste pills that you bite and they come in paper, like things like that. Because I worry about, what are people going to do without jobs?
Yep, for sure. And I mean, that's a very, very big problem because there has to be some reason to exist, and work is one of those basic things that humans seem to want to do and like. And so I'm going to say that my future is one where people actually work a little bit less, and maybe they don't get paid quite as much, but maybe they don't have the same kind of need for money. They don't have the need to buy all that stuff that they think they need right now, and they need money for, and therefore they have to work harder to get it. So it's a world where they're going to be more content with things that are not resource consumptive.
Yes. Yes.
And allow a circular economy, and allow lots and lots of entrepreneurs to do lots of good things, but in a direction towards more sustainability. And that's not what we have today.
Yeah, and focus on family and focus on experiences.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Food is such a big one. If you grow your own food, you're going to love it so much, right? Like you guys probably love your veggies that you grow so much more than if you just buy something in a plastic packaging that came from who knows where, from who knows who, right? Does your wife do any jarring at all? Does she ever?
Yes, we do. Yeah, we have a whole pile of big jar or canning cellar. We have our freezers full of stuff that we grow in the summer and eat during the winter. And I love to fish, so I catch lots of salmon and halibut here and stick them in the freezer and eat them all winter. And it's pretty nice. But not everybody has the luck of being able to do all of that. But we do, and we that's how we live.
That's awesome. Well, you can find it if you look for it. Usually, if you look for sustainable products wherever you live, there's usually places you can go. So, that's just so wonderful. Well, Ross, thank you so much for taking this time to talk to us today.
Pleasure.
And I think that you're just doing wonderful things. And I wish there were more people like you that were
There's lots of people like me. There's lots of people like me, and your listeners are some of those that they should all be proud of what they're doing and trying to do, because it's change is either from the top down or the bottom up, and I think we all have to be part of that bottom up and make changes in our own lives that ultimately affect how our economy and society works.
And do whatever we can. And it's so nice that you're spending money on things that really, really matter, because sometimes I just wonder what people are spending so much money on when people have so much. What are they doing with it?
I do too. I just don't get it. I mean, I go to a mall, and I see this sort of stuff people are buying, be it fashion or furniture, it doesn't matter. And just, hey, what are they? And I see people building these humongous houses all over the place. They just have to be filled with stuff they don't need, they don't use. And I just wonder what's in their heads. Like, what is this compulsion we have to consume? And can we break it and not live any worse off at all? That's a puzzle that really I haven't figured out yet.
When I see people buy stuff like that, I think of it going into a garbage bag, because it's going to end up there soon, right? And then it's probably going to go to landfill, because we don't have a whole lot of incinerators here. I know there are some, which are also problematic and a whole other topic. But thank you so much, and good luck with all of your work, and enjoy the rain today. Take care.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Bye-bye.
That was Ross Beaty, a chairman at Equinox Gold and founder of the Sitka Foundation. If you like our show and want to help save the world from all this trash we're consuming, please consider donating to the Zero Waste Countdown. You can become a patron on Podbean, you can find me on Patreon, or you can donate right on the website, zerowastecountdown.com. And if you're interested in seeing a photo of our guests, you can check us out on Instagram. That's _waste_countdown. And if you want to email me, it's laura@zerowastecountdown.com. Thank you for listening, everybody. Thanks to all our listeners in America, Canada, Australia, Germany, the UK, and wherever else you may be tuning in from. Together, we're going to change the world.
Change starts now.
This is the Zero Waste Countdown Podcast.